How are you feeling today?
Good morning, Daniel. I'm feeling a bit excited, I must say. It's the
Very well.
first time that I'm participating in a podcast. But good.
Very nice to hear. As I expressed earlier on, this is the first time that I'm doing an online podcast as well, so I'm a little bit excited and nervous because I want everything to go as smooth as possible. So, yeah.
That's fine. You're in the right place to be excited and
Yeah.
nervous.
Thank you for your reassurance.
Of course.
So, Corinne, you've recently relocated to Scotland, and
hmm
what's the story behind that?
Oh my, that's a that's a very very long story. Um, let's start with the short part version of the story first.
Okay.
I am currently working at a university in Glasgow, which is called Glasgow Caledonian
Okay.
University, which focuses on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals
Okay.
and is very much into sustainability. And since sustainability is very much to my heart, that's where I'm working at right now.
Okay. Are you working on a particular aspect of the SDGs or or
Well, Um, no, they're mostly in general. So
okay.
it is the University for the Common Good. So it's in the
Okay.
in its own title, and we focus on ensuring that students are sensitive to the needs of the world, especially because we have a lot of international students as well. So when teaching in the classroom, it is very normal to have at least 4 to 5 nationalities, if not more.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, yes. And the debates there, especially related to sustainability, can take very particular modes, especially if we're talking between people coming from different areas of the world. So ensuring good education in one country can be different to ensuring good education in another totally different part of the world.
Okay. And do you think a certain SDG is more important or giving more priority in a certain country to another? Is there a difference in that?
I would say that there are SDGs which are more important for one country than another. If we take the case of Malta, life below water would be
Mm,
more important
yeah.
to us, not than life on Earth. Well, because I'm hoping we take care of both,
Yeah.
it's different than having a landlocked country like, for example, Nepal.
Yeah.
So there's difference in how valid they are and how salient they are as well.
Mm,
So, for example, the no poverty can be even more important in countries which are more developing than ones which are developed.
okay.
Even though at this point in time we're getting high inflation rates all over the world, well, probably in Europe more than anywhere
Yeah.
else, but yes.
Well, the plan is to everyone will be on these targets till the 2023. Am I correct?
It is, up to my knowledge, 2030.
So,
Um,
to
uh,
2030, I meant.
that
No, 2030.
that's fine. That's fine. And I think they are ambitious targets. I would love to dream that they will be reached.
Mm,
Um, I'm not so positive in the real life,
mm,
but I think that unless we really try, we won't even, if we don't get 100%, if we get to 50, we started from somewhere.
yeah. Well, it's not a long way to go, and there are quite a number of areas that require
Yes,
attention. So
yes.
it's a massive global project.
I
All right. So
agree.
that's the short story from what I gather, right?
Come again?
That's the short story of why you
That's
moved
the
to Scotland.
start, the short
That's the short
story, yes.
story. What's the longer version of the story?
Well, Daniel, I am 45 this year, so that's a very long uh, journey, to be fair. And what I like to say, especially related to um, our career development, I don't like my career to define who I am.
Okay.
So if someone asks me, who are you? I would rather say that I'm a wife to Noel, who's my husband, I'm my parents' daughter and my brother's sister, rather than saying that I am and the title that is related to work.
Okay.
And that is something which I learned a few years ago, because I tended to be one of those who attached my title to who I am. So if someone asks me, who are you? I would say, I'm a lecturer at the Glasgow Caledonian University, for example. But I learned, I would say a bit the hard way, that that's not the whole story. So
Yeah.
if I were to look back, the thing that remained constant is for sure my love for education. That has been very constant, and I can tell you about that as well. But in terms of career, I started off wanting to be an archaeologist.
Okay.
And as you can see, that hasn't happened yet.
Yet.
So it's strange because um, I I I don't like to plan and say in 5 years' time I want to be this, and that.
Mhm.
That does not really work for me. And
Mhm.
even because I've learned it through many years. So I wanted to become an archaeologist when I was studying at sixth form at that point in time. I
Yeah.
studied history and the languages of the countries who colonized Malta. So I studied English, French, and Arabic. And I
Mhm.
was very adamant on that. Then someone told my parents that there's no future in that. That was a that was not true. But anyway, I had to leave my passion for history and
Okay.
go elsewhere. So at that point in time, I just left school and I started my career as a secretary in a manufacturing company. And to be fair, just before that, I had been a waitress in a couple of hotels as well. So that's
Like
where
most
well,
people, right?
like most people. And
Yeah.
honestly, when I used to do interviews, I used to find that very important,
Yeah.
because unless, at least the way I see it, unless we start climbing the steps bit by bit,
Yeah.
we cannot be conscious of what it feels to be lower down the ranks.
Very true.
And
Very
that
true.
is, I would say, vital, especially now that I was in management and in teaching management. So that's another thing. But then at that point in time, I had left the school and went to work, and eventually returned to school a year later. And that was another funny story, because at that point in time, I said, what am I going to do? I went to university, and was going to apply for a BCom,
Okay.
Bachelor in Commerce. I heard people speaking in English and I wasn't comfortable with that, and I did not go. So as I went to ITS, to the
Okay.
Institute of Tourism Studies
Here we
instead.
are.
And
We
here
did.
we are.
Here we are.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So I would say that my career journey has been, and I would say still is, um, not not fluid in the sense of not being permanent in what I do, because I like not reaching for the next step immediately. So I had a career in telecoms which lasted 18 years with a particular company.
Oh wow. Okay.
So so yes, that was, I would say, a very big part of the journey. But I
Mhm.
remember someone who used to work with me, and he used to tell me, Corinne, the moment you leave that door, the title is no longer yours.
Okay.
And I thought about it at that point,
Mm. Yeah.
and I lived it a few years later, because I had become very much accustomed to having a particular title,
Yeah.
and living in that role and being responsible for that role. And at a point, once I left that role, that title was no longer mine. So that was a big help that this person had told me that years before, because when I lived it, I said, this is what it feels like. The
Yeah.
title is not mine. Who I am is who I am, but not the title.
It's a very deep message if you read, so not reading between the
Mhm,
lines, but
mhm.
if you reflect on it, the title is no longer yours. It is something that you acquire. A title is something that you acquire. It is not. It is part of you temporarily,
Yes,
but it doesn't
yes.
define who you are. And this is exactly what you're expressing. So, um, but but yes, when you work very passionately about on your career, because a career is not something that is it's ever changing sort of.
Hmm, hmm.
It's like island hopping. Um, it is something that it's very easily to identify yourself with, as you said. So if I work in HR, it's very easy to identify myself as a person in HR. But before that, I
Yes,
did other things, and on my personal life, I do other things as well. So there
yes.
are different.
And we might end up doing other things as well.
Yeah.
So there's a core of me which I say is relatively permanent, but not everything.
Yes. And that is the important thing. I think, especially when it comes to growth, we can't limit ourselves to just one title, to just one way of doing things, because
Hmm, hmm.
um, there are many things that can be done, and there are many aspects of ourselves which we might not be aware of as well.
That's really true. That's
And
very, very true.
and I think it's very admirable what you did. You went to live outside the
Admirable
country.
or crazy, Daniel?
No, no, I find it admirable. Oh, because I think you felt that you've reached some sort of level here
Hmm.
in Malta, and you wanted to expand even further in terms of growth as well. So I do think it's quite admirable, because it takes courage. And
Well, thank you so much for that. It made my day, honestly.
okay.
But yes, it's an enriching experience, I must say. I
Mm,
wouldn't say that it's for everyone,
yeah.
because I admire people who are happy to be where they are, and that's honestly, if a person is happy, then they are happy. I don't always advocate for people to look for more in their career. And now in my new role, especially because I deal with a lot of people who are students at master's levels who have their own career, I don't think that people are all intended to move onwards and upwards. If you are happy with what you do, then your career is what it is for you. Um, my aspirations for studying and for education, that has been a bit different, because that I've always aspired to reach other levels.
Mm,
And honestly, it's not because of titles and so on, it's because I love to learn. So I know it sounds crazy, but I love to study.
yeah. It's part of the
This
package.
podcast can stop here.
The listeners will drop down. Well, I don't think there's nothing wrong with studying. However, I would say that we have to know ourselves well enough to know how we can study for ourselves. So let me explain. We're all
Yes.
different learners. So if I'm forced to read a book, most probably I won't read it, because I don't enjoy reading as I should be. I think there's value in reading, but that's not the way I consume knowledge. I'd rather sit down and watch a video and sort of make things up, combine the ideas in my own head, and then perhaps read a chapter or two. And so it's a whole mix, it's a whole mind map of things. But I wouldn't say that I enjoy studying. I'd rather I'm very hands-on, so I learn as I go along with practice. So it's important to know what ticks for you when it comes to studying. So because when we hear the term studying, I think most people associate the reading aspect of studying or the research aspect of studying.
Yes, I know. I totally agree with that, Daniel. Um, I don't know if you know, but just before I came here, I was an entrepreneur, so I had my own enterprise for 3 years, which I must say was one of the biggest learning experiences that I have ever had.
Mm,
So before I had never seen myself as being self-employed or a freelancer or an entrepreneur. That
mhm,
was a title that I never imagined. And to be honest with you, accepting that was one of the biggest challenges that I had ever faced. So when people used to tell me, what do you do for a job? When I just started, it was like, it was imposter syndrome on a large scale.
I am in that phase at this stage. So
It happens. It
indeed,
happens. And
indeed.
unfortunately, if we don't speak about it, people will think that it's wrong.
Yes, yes,
And looking back now, I say it was a very important phase where I started to, first of all, define who I am, because before that, the titles that were given to me were those that defined me.
yeah.
So at that point, I was the person who's defining who I am, and I did not feel qualified to define who I am.
Mm,
So I would say that I am a corporate trainer and a consultant, but I was afraid to say that I can be that.
yeah,
You know, it's strange, and I till today my husband is going through that phase, and it's nice to see, because now that we've experienced it, we know how to
yeah,
tackle. But
yes.
at a point, if someone used to come and tell me, what do you do? I would have rather run away than answer that question.
No, I get the same feeling, so I can very much relate to that. But
So,
it's funny because when we are in employment and we're sort of working for someone else, and that's nothing wrong with that, it's so easy for us. But when it comes to doing something for ourselves,
Mhm.
it's extremely difficult sometimes.
I think about this a lot, Daniel, a lot, even because my current research is focused on ethical decision
Yeah.
making in
Hmm.
organizations. Um, I think about it because I used to think that companies are a real thing, and
Okay.
I used to think that they are a legitimate thing. So if a company tells you that this is your title, then this is your title. And if a company gives you a promotion, then that's because you earned it. If it doesn't, then it's because that you're not worth it.
Hmm.
I don't think that anymore.
Okay.
I think that companies are not exactly a real thing. They are things which are created, sometimes used and sometimes abused, in the sense that people will tell you this is what the company said, but the company is people who take decisions. And sometimes it's people who are afraid to say, I said this. They hide behind a group of decisions where the group said this, but it's not a group. It's usually people who either agree or have to agree or feel that they need to agree.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so today I look at these things probably with a strange outlook. So a company is a group of people who are making decisions together. There is a culture which is very strong as well, and that makes a very big difference, but
It does.
it does not need to be the defining factor.
Mm-hmm. Does. I find this quite interesting. Was most often than not, I think we see company, even myself, I see a company as an entity, sort of its own.
Mhm.
Even in legal terms, a company is an entity. It's a sort of a
Yes,
non-living person.
yes, yes.
But however, I think when I agreed on the fact that when we mentioned the company it decided that. It might not necessarily mean that we are impersonating the company, but a group of people. Because sometimes it's Daniel said that or Corinne said that, and we
Yes,
understood
yes,
it.
yes, yes, yes,
But
yes, yes.
yes, we can't abuse it because sometimes we, perhaps what I see is that some people abuse of the company to
Mhm.
hide behind the company name. So if I took the decision, and it might be a hard decision, I took it, not the company. If
Yes,
it's just
I
like
took
that.
it on behalf of the entity, which is a created entity, which has legal representation and
Yeah.
so on. But what I look at right now, so it's not whether an entity, a legal entity, is an entity in and of itself,
Hmm.
but rather myself as forming part of an organization. I look at the organization today differently than I used to before.
Hmm.
So for me, an organization is today a group of people who make decisions.
Yeah.
Usually they try to do them in good faith, sometimes not so much.
Mm.
So I do not take the opinion of a company to be the hard truth. I still question quite a bit.
Hmm.
And I know it's a strange outlook, and and I've arrived. I think a lot. I tend to think a lot, and probably too much. And so this has come through a lot of years of and experiences
Hmm.
that I have gone through, some of which are not easy. But then again, no one has a really easy life anyway.
That's for sure. But this very much ties into your research at the moment.
Mhm.
For the listeners out there who are not aware of ethical business, what is it about?
Right. So, Daniel, if it's okay with you, I would like to give a bit of an overview of my educational life,
For sure.
the part that I love to study.
For sure.
um, so I mentioned ITS.
Yes.
After ITS, I went into the industry and I started that 18-year career that I had. And I started off from being, at that point in time, it was called a junior administrative officer. A year later, I was promoted to a senior administrative officer, and that meant that for the very first time, even though I had learned a bit about management through ITS, I was now responsible for other people.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, I realized that I want to know more. Because the first step into management, particularly the supervisory step, I would say is even more difficult than the other steps.
Hmm.
Because it now becomes not just about how you behave and what you do, it becomes more important that you get results through the work of other people. And so some people may become complacent and let everything be. Other people may turn into what we usually term as micromanagers. So they want to make sure that everything's perfect. If I don't do that, then it's not going to be good. And it's a very particular phase. So at that point, I went to the University of Malta, and I started a diploma in management. Just following that, I continued with an MBA. And then in 2008, I took a break. And my husband says that those were the worst years of his life.
Okay. For him.
Because he says, and I look at it and I think he is right, you know. I like learning so much that when I was not learning something new, I was not feeling motivated.
Mhm. Okay.
And as I tried to be now saying that an MBA is enough and that's it, it didn't work for me. So years later, I did a master's in business ethics in Malta as well. And just after that, I started a PhD with the University of Glasgow, which started in 2019, just before COVID hit.
Okay.
So,
Right on time.
well, everyone I speak to would say just before COVID, and it feels like a different life.
Yes. We do have 2 years of void in reality, but
Oh my. Oh, when I look back, I would say, ooh, that was strange.
it was strange. It was strange. So we got back to normality, I would say, but not entirely.
It's, 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 yes, it's strange. strange
It
in a
is.
way that when I look back, I say, how was it possible that we were inside our home, and I hate being at home somehow. I
Welcome.
like. Yes, I love the outdoors, so it was very difficult, and
Yeah.
I know it was difficult for many other people in many different ways. So for me, the biggest challenge was being at home. For others, the biggest challenge was not being at home. So if uh, I didn't mind getting sick, but for
Mm.
other people that was a big thing, and
For
that was
sure.
for some people that was afraid for their life, and that's no joke. While for me, I'm afraid that that I cannot survive if I'm inside. But that's something else. So
You didn't have enough painting to do at home or home
ah,
renovations.
no. No, I had. Remember, I was telling you about the imposter syndrome and moving to
Yes, yes, yes,
entrepreneurship. So I moved
yes.
into entrepreneurship in July 2019. The
Exactly.
moment, the moment I had bookings for January to March, then everything collapsed. And
Mm,
yeah, yes, yes. But
well,
I wouldn't say that my experience was more challenging than others, although, and I know that I'm deviating a lot, although I would like to say that there were times where I needed mental help,
mm,
and it was tough. And if I did not reach out for help, it wouldn't have been, I wouldn't be here like this today. So if any one of your listeners is going through a rough patch, I honestly urge them to reach out. There are people who can help, and it's okay not to be okay. I know that it's now become a thing
yeah,
to say,
yeah.
but it's honestly not an easy part of life.
Mm,
Because if you're feeling helpless and hopeless, it's a real feeling, and it's not something to be underestimated. So for those who feel like that, speak out. And that's what I did, and I found help, and I was lucky. So going back to my research.
I thank you for saying that, Corinne. I mean,
No,
um,
I think that we need to speak about these things
yeah, and everyone does.
because
Something that is from what you said and stuck with me. Starting your own venture, I think, at least from my experience so far in life, I think it's the most difficult thing that you can do.
yes,
Because at least it's up there. It's one of the most difficult things that you can do because there are so many moving parts, and so many things that you have to learn about yourself and challenge about yourself.
yes,
That
yes.
I think it's the most difficult thing that you can do. And I started it
Um,
on 2020 as well, so it's in the midst of COVID.
of
So
COVID,
I can relate to what
yes,
you're saying as well.
yes. About that, I think that there are people who can do it much more easily than I did.
Yes, I can see that. Yeah.
Um, I personally am an introvert, even though it does not show. I'm a person who thinks a lot. I'm a person who needs my alone time. I'm a person who finds networking extremely tiring, and I'm afraid of it. And when I said I'm going into entrepreneurship, I had this impression of who an entrepreneur should be, and
Mhm.
that impression was not me.
Okay.
So when I see people who find it easy to make to network, I respect that and I admire that. But when I am in networking events, I usually look around the room and look for people who, just like I do, would go into the corner. Sometimes I find it so difficult that I tell myself, go. If you don't like it, just leave. Because not everyone is easy to make connections, and in entrepreneurship, making connections is the lifeline of what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then again, when when you start reaching out to people who are on the same level, and from here I have a particular person, Joseph Faruja, who would like to mention, when you meet people who are like-minded and you like working with, then you realize that it's okay. I mean, you don't have to be the biggest businessman in the world. If you just
Yeah.
start small, you bootstrap bit by bit, and it happens. And people tell you that in entrepreneurship is about resilience and not giving up. And that's exactly it. So I moved to this part of my career, not because it wasn't doing very well. Actually, it was doing quite well.
Okay.
It's because I'm currently in my final stages of my PhD and I'm focusing more on my research subject rather than the entrepreneurship side. But what I did there was innovation workshops where you really see how different people learn. So some people are hands-on, others are visuals, others want to read, others want to watch others do things before they move on. So that's
Yes, yes, yes.
taught
The
me a
late
lot.
adopters.
Yes, that taught me a lot, a lot. And even as I look around my classroom today, I I don't really like giving everyone reading and that's it. And to be honest, the university that I work for doesn't either. So, and I think most universities are moving forward with that.
Yes, I think so
So
too.
it's about discussions, creating things. Recently I gave my group a task to create a flyer for an island here in quite close to Glasgow.
Okay.
It's an island who focuses on tourism, and they wanted to have a flyer, and so we did that. And you would see people who start drawing, others who look at a blank page for a few minutes. It's others who just write and others who just draw, and it's amazing.
Everyone sees things differently and everyone tackles things differently.
Hmm. Hmm.
I especially nowadays, I know this a buzzword as well in today's day and age, but it's true. In today's day and age, I think that we are more susceptible to judgment by others because of obviously social media.
Hmm.
It's a fact, I would say. And having the courage to be you, it's 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 quite difficult. It takes a lot of courage, more than it used to be in the past. Because in the past, especially here in Malta, we're a small community. You know the people in your village perhaps, and that's it. So your network is around 50 or 70 people. But
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
today your network is much larger than that, and sometimes it's very difficult to be not authentic, because you might be authentic and you might want to be authentic, but it's being you,
Yes, yes.
comfortable being
It's
you.
being vulnerable, Daniel, the way I
Yes,
see it.
yes as
So
well.
I am lucky to have lived for a few years without social media. So I know that it was different, and I know I have seen what social media does. Sometimes um people can be so engulfed in it that it's
Mm,
the reality. And one of the things that I am very conscious of is the dopamine hit that we get when we get likes on our posts, etc. And to be honest with you, I have moved quite a bit away from the social media, um, one particular platform, um, because I think that we need to live our life in the real world. And if I condition myself based on how many likes I get, then I'm not happy, because it's going to always be dependent on other people's likes.
yeah.
So yes, when I put a post on social media, I wouldn't say that I don't look at it. And to be honest with you, it gives me a nice feeling, but I am careful,
Hmm.
in the sense that I don't do it on purpose and often just for my own uh,
Selfish reassurance,
dopamine hit
probably.
sort
Yes,
of
yes,
thing.
yes,
And at the moment, I would say that it's very topical, especially in Malta. when I look at the current debates on people who were going on a particular program and what they're faced with, etc. And
Mm.
it's sad. Honestly, it's sad that sometimes it reminds me of the Stanford prison experiment. I don't know
Mm.
if you've heard about that,
Yeah, yes.
because sometimes we might take it too far.
We might. And we might assume an identity which is not ours.
Yes, yes, yes. A few months ago, I had written an article, and when I write, I tend to be a bit provocative in what I write. No,
Okay.
no, in the in the intellectual sense,
Yeah.
hopefully. But yes, so I wrote an article a few months ago, and it was about the joy of seeing other people suffer,
Okay.
and it was about how unfortunately there is a trend which I'm observing, that is, I am fine with writing things which are hurtful from
Mm.
my keyboard because I feel detached from that, and I don't realize the hurt that it's bringing. And that particular article was published, and it was also published on social media, and I did not realize. And someone sent me a message, and they told me, was this article authored by you? And I said, where did this come from? You know, when I didn't realize that it was on social media, I said yes. And the moment I said yes, it was authored by me, I got messages like, how dare you say that illegal aliens are people? And I was saying, what on earth is this person talking about? And I
Illegal
realized that
aliens.
it was, apparently it was construed to be about illegal immigration.
Okay.
So it took a life of its own. And to be fair with you, this had nothing to do with immigration. It started because I was seeing people who would say something about Malta in a particular way, and someone else telling them, if you don't like it, go away. How
Yes.
can you ask someone to go away? Today it's different. I did go away, but not for those reasons, you know. But
Fair.
how can you tell someone, if you don't like it, go away, when it's your country as much as it is someone
Mm.
else's? But that article, there were people who were saying this is an immature person who doesn't know what she's writing. There were others who were saying that I am taking European funding money. So there were all these sort of stories that were construed around this. And this was a very small article. Okay? Let alone if you're putting yourself out there for people to judge.
Yeah.
And it was hurtful for me. People were telling me, don't look at the comments, because I tend to take them personal. And at the end of the day, if I wrote an article, then I'm, expecting
Yeah.
expecting a reaction. The problem was that it was misconstrued in another way, but
Yeah.
that's apparently normal. So
That's the drama that we all enjoy. I
yes,
get. Not
yes,
everyone,
yes,
but
yes.
but yeah. No,
So yes.
but it's very true. I think things can take a negative turn really quickly on social media. So and uh, and you have to be very strong to take that. And I would take it personally as well. So I'd rather not see the comments than see them and spend and spend a day like a mummy or something.
There was one particular comment, I can't remember exactly the expression used, but it was along the lines of immature and young.
Well, you wanted to be provocative, right?
And that was the joy of seeing other people suffer, most probably. But anyway, so I think we need to be very careful with realizing um, the strength of emotions that real people, feel when
Yeah,
comments can be hurtful.
yeah. And sometimes things are not. Sometimes we take things literally, or we analyze them at face value. And sometimes we have to ask ourselves, okay, but did this person had in mind, or what did they want to convey with this article or with this
Mhm.
video or with this post. Sometimes see things, and because um, uh, we are in touch with many information at one go, sometimes we don't have enough time, I think, to process what we are seeing and scrolling on social media. Just with the immediate thought that comes in, we immediately type a message or a response to that without thinking too deeply. Um, it's the
We have
fast-paced world.
preconceptions, Daniel, We have
Yeah,
preconceptions.
we do.
And when we see something, we color it in our own mental frame. And this is where my research actually comes in.
Hmm.
Because I research ethical decision making in everyday business decisions.
Okay.
And we have a lot of preconceptions into what business decision making is. And we take decisions based on those. So something which came out of my research is that, for example, as we tend to grow older, we choose our battles. So we don't fight every battle because it depletes us.
Yeah.
And so we don't fight for everything that there is to fight for. And we allow things to happen even though we don't believe in them.
Mm.
And I would say it's the reality of many people, and it's this type of conditioning that when I'm making a decision as an entrepreneur, for example, many people tell you cannot be too naive, because otherwise you'll run out of business. And I would say that wisdom in business and in entrepreneurship is probably different than the cheating that people associate with it.
Mm.
Because I think that we can be wise and not cheating, but many people associate that unless you cheat in one way or another, you're not going to get the business.
That's very true. Um, they see it as a synonym. It's one on the same. But
Hmm.
yeah, but you can be
So,
entrepreneurial, you can be business oriented, you can generate money, but you do it without cheating, sort of. So yeah, I
yes,
think that
yes.
is possible. It's harder. Might
It takes
might
longer. It
takes
takes
longer.
longer, Daniel, and it builds relationships which last.
Yeah.
So sometimes you would have a discussion with someone casually, and that relationship comes back a few years later, and would say, remember when we discussed this and this and that, are you still interested? Would you like to do something with that? um and those things happen. We don't
Yeah.
Somehow we think of entrepreneurship, and we're painting the the few people who make a lot of money very early on in life as if they are role models. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, if I'm following a role model who I believe should be a billionaire by 40, then I need to find ways and means for myself to be a billionaire by 40. Otherwise, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
And if those are the role models which people are getting, then unfortunately, it's not easy for someone to feel okay if they are bootstrapping and they're building up their business bit by bit.
Yeah. Do you have role models, Corinne?
um I would say my father.
Okay. Well,
He would be proud, but yes. Other than that, there are a lot of people who I admire in
okay.
one way or another, but not people in their, I would, I'm very careful at saying that someone is who I want to be, because I know that that person has struggles that I know nothing of.
Hmm.
And I also know that that person might have made mistakes that I know nothing of.
Very cool.
And everyone does mistakes. And that is another message that I really like to pass on. We're just human. We make mistakes, and we're not intended to have a linear uphill trend. I don't think that success in life means making more money this year than the other one.
Hmm.
Success in life is being more fulfilled, I would say. and being authentic to our true selves and walking our own journey without following anyone else. But admiring traits in other people who do it better than we do. So I remember someone where I used to work. He was very good at taking decisions, irrespective of whether they were good or otherwise. He was so sure of himself that you would say he's right.
Mm.
And I don't emulate that, but I admire that.
But it's very
But
true.
mostly I admire people who can say, listen, I've made mistakes. I've done them and I will in the future. So don't try
Yeah,
to be like me because it's not okay. Just be you.
yeah. So it's I think you're saying that when the person is comfortable with embracing their human side and
Mhm.
being humble in their approach, that would be the person you'd admire.
I would, yes. I
Mm.
would. I
And
would.
I think we've touched on the topic of humility earlier on in our conversation because it takes humility to admit that you made a mistake and that um, you're human and that you're a work in progress, sort of.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it does take a little does take humility to admit that.
Um, I think that admitting to be, to have humility is the biggest antithesis of humility. But I do admire people who are humble in their approach.
Mm.
I wouldn't say that I'm always like that, and I would like to be like that. But yes, being able to say I've made mistakes, especially when we are in positions where others follow us.
Yeah.
So I was in management for a number of years. Now my position of leadership is in the classroom, and it's different because in one way it's different because people expect of you to lead. In another way, even in managerial outlooks and positions, you are also expected to lead.
Hmm.
And one of the things that may not be always said is that managers are human beings. We just take decisions under uncertainty all the time. And that means that if this is an uncertain decision, I have a chance that it's going to work out right and not or not. So through experience, most probably we gain a very good sense of what will work and what will not.
Yes.
But some things will always, go wrong for us.
Hmm.
And learning to admit a mistake is the biggest learning part of it, because once you have said this did not work right, then I can change.
Yeah.
If I mediment in a way that I say no, this was okay and nothing can be done, then I'm not going to learn anything new.
And that's key in leadership because most leaders are afraid or retract when it comes to admitting that a mistake was done.
Mhm.
It's not a mistake because, as you said earlier, you take a decision with the best of intentions, but some things, the way that they work out, are not perhaps foreseeable. So we might take a decision with the unfortunate result. So, but facing that with the team or with the company, whatever, as a
Mhm. Mhm.
leader, and
Mhm.
um, are publicly saying that that was a mistake, but we're doing this, and this to mitigate or to reverse the damage or to reduce the impact or whatever. I think that's a huge sign of strength, which is often underestimated.
Yes, and often abused of in a way by others, but I think that it's the way that it should be. Um, in a way, people who are in management are expected not to make mistakes.
Yes, that is why.
That is one of them. And the second one is that we also, if we are in a leadership position, we don't want to make mistakes and we don't want to make them often, because that means that we're not good leaders.
Yes.
So we try to uphold our own image of who we are, and we try to show a side of ourselves, even to ourselves, because we don't like to feel like a failure.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so admitting a failure is challenging both for the team around you and for yourself, because it's admitting that you might not be very good at what you do.
Mm.
And we're not perfect, but mistakes do happen. So this is also another aspect of my research, and it is how we uphold our own vision of ourselves.
Mhm.
And we don't want to feel that we are less than who we think we are. So we don't want to feel that we are imposters.
Yeah.
And so we create an image of ourselves that is in line with what we want to be. And if I want to be a great leader, and if I believe that a great leader should never make a mistake, then I'm never going to admit a mistake. I'm going to justify it. I'm going to find reasons why that happened, not out of something that is my own fault.
Yeah. And you might limit the learning aspect of that
Of course,
by doing
yes.
so. So,
Yes. And there's also a limit to how many mistakes we make.
yeah.
In this sense, a mistake is a mistake, but then if we don't learn from it, it's no longer a mistake.
Yes. And there are ways and means how you can mitigate the mistake as well. Usually
Mhm.
by doing research before, by doing a good plan, which is um, the 80-20 rule, right? So you 80% the planning and the 20% is the execution.
The
So,
execution.
so it takes 80% effort of a project to plan and to make
Mhm.
sure that everything
Mhm.
is set up, and then the execution becomes easier. Yesterday I had this conversation. So I'm very much involved with Scouts, and
Oh, nice.
yes, and I'm the children that I lead are aged between 10 and 14, roughly. And recently we went to an expedition and went on a trail, a 35 kilometers trail, and this is a yearly thing that we try to upkeep, and it's part of the educational program as well.
Mhm.
And basically they had to plan it all out. They had to prepare the route, prepare the checkpoints, make sure that they don't pass from high elevation grounds and etc. So they had to book the campsite as well. So everything was in their hands. And the planning part of this activity was not as good as I hoped to. But one of the key lessons that I've learned in leading scouts is that sometimes you have to let them make the mistake and then learn from it. The performance was excellent because usually the performance is very poor. 35 kilometers for children at that age is quite tough. But their performance was very good. Most of them were practice sport, so they took it on and then went along with it. And yesterday we sort of had the conclusion or the follow-up meeting to close this chapter and sort of to evaluate what went wrong, what could have been done better, and what we would learn from this experience. And this came out that the planning was very poor, and if they did plan very well, things would have gone much smoother because they were ready, they were physically ready. And the most important thing in such adventures is the mind over matter situation, that your body is tired and you mentally have to keep pushing forward. And if, for example, there was a particular instance that I mentioned to them, and is that they struggled with pitching their tents, which is very disappointing in the sense because they are the oldest children in the group, so they should know how to pitch a hike tent, which is a relatively easy task for a scout. So, and so I mentioned that I mentioned that if it was a windy day, they wouldn't be able to do it because the campsite wasn't ideal to pitch a hike tent because we couldn't peg the tent because of the terrain. There was not enough soil to pitch
Mhm.
the tent. And if I mention, if there was one different element, it was a very nice day, it was a very peaceful day, there was no wind, etc. But I mentioned that what if there was wind on the day? What would have been done? Wouldn't have managed to pitch the tent for sure. So if it and then I mentioned the saying that um, nice weather didn't make a good sailor, or how the saying goes. And it I explained to them that it was nice weather, and even though we did it and we did it well, it doesn't mean that we have to be overconfident now, and that it means that
Mhm.
we did the expect. But What if something goes wrong? We have to always think like that so that we can prepare ourselves for it.
That is such a great learning experience. Well, we went camping a couple of weeks ago and we returned the second day because we didn't realize that the tent that we got from Malta, which was not used to rain,
Okay, all right.
flooded.
I've been there many times.
So it's such a great learning experience, and I think that children, even so, I this is another strange thing that I tend to do. When I say children, I say human beings who are of a young age,
Yes,
because
yes,
they're the same person who will turn 40, who will hopefully turn 60, who will hopefully turn 70, but they are human beings at a young age. And I
yes,
think that these experiences are so important, so important, because many children today are living in a virtual world, and as we go further, it will become even more virtual.
yes.
Um, and if we lose touch with nature, with these capabilities of changing a bulb, of pitching a tent, of walking 35 miles.
No, not my,
The kilometers, yes,
my,
right. Well, listen, I love walking, but 35 kilometers would be a killer for me.
no, and we had a good pace. We're walking around 4 kilometers per hour, so that's a very good
Wow.
pace for
Of
children.
course it is. But yes, I think that people need that those type of skills, those type that enable us to weather any storm, because storms
Yeah.
come.
Yes.
Something which I mentioned my father earlier, and something which my father said a few years ago, which really hit home, is that when he looks into the mirror, he sees the same person who was there at age 20. And he said, this is me. I don't see myself as an elderly or a youth or a whatever at any point. This is just me. And I have been building myself up like this for many years. And I see this happen even more as as I grow older. And so being at this age, I say, I am Corinne. Most probably, I haven't changed quite that much from when I was 18 in terms of who I am. But obviously,
Mhm.
the the physical part changes. But we are us, and I think that one of the most important things in a human being is authenticity and being true to ourselves and um, being able to adapt.
Mm.
So I wouldn't say life has some sort of rule book, or that I would read a lot of books that will tell you how to become whatever it is that you want to become, because
Mhm.
I think that everyone's life path is different. And the moment that we learn to not just embrace it, but to work with it and use it to become who we want to be in our core, then that's enough.
Mhm. Mhm. And it sounds simple, but very difficult to do. It sounds
Yes,
very simple,
yes, I would say yes.
but it's
Probably
very
it
nice to
becomes easier as, as
Well, it should in reality. So it should. That is, I think, build up wisdom over the time, so over the years. So
uh-huh.
it should become easier, yes. But you still have to look at yourself from a third party position, sort of, so that you look at yourself as you still are self-critical, not in a harsh way, but you say,
Hmm.
listen, I have these good aspects, but these negative aspects, and
Yes,
we
yes,
are a
yes,
mix
yes,
of the plus and minuses, sort of.
yes.
Some minuses you can deal with them in a certain way that you can improve upon them or reduce them as much as you can, but you can't please everyone as well. So
That's true.
you might have a good characteristic that pisses other people off. So
Big time. Yes, it's true. It's true. And it can even piss myself off, but
Yeah. Right.
um, I would say that nearing the end, a nugget of wisdom that my mother gave me very recently. So as I was thinking of moving here,
Hmm.
and I tend to plan quite a bit, in the sense that when I have a project to do, I tend to plan. So
Yeah.
if I were to be pitching that tent, I would be spending a lot of time thinking about how to pitch that.
Yes.
The problem would be not actually getting there to pitch the tent, because you know.
Well, you can always
As I was
find another campsite, your temporary campsite.
as I was planning to come here, and I was doing all the preparations, and I was thinking, who do I need to speak to about the car, about the visa, about the health.
Mm,
Finances is a very big thing when you move house,
mhm, mhm.
especially when you would have had your own house and now you're moving into rent and starting afresh.
Yeah.
And once my mom, my mom, she told me so well. She told me, min jagħmel il-kont tal-borma ma jsejjarx. So whoever counts the pennies for cooking does not even cook at all.
Yeah.
And I try to remember that because I need that.
Sometimes you have to go all in and don't be.
Yes. Go all in, and whatever comes, and you'll manage.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about about your research about ethics,
Mhm.
because what are ethics to you, and how can perhaps explain it in simple terms?
Right. That is a very difficult question, in the sense that people have been trying to answer that for many thousands of years.
Yeah.
And I'm not able to give you an answer, but I will give you my thoughts on that. So I think that ethics is most fundamentally my own values, right? What is important to me. Now, what is important to me is based on a lot of other things. That includes how I was brought up. That includes religion. It includes country culture. It includes a lot of things. My education, um, who I am as a woman as well. So it is very much formed on a core of values that are dear to me. Now, my research is about how we all go against those core values that we hold very dear without realizing.
Okay. Very interesting.
And if I were to say something about ethics after, now I'm nearing the end, so I'm hopefully going for my Viva later on this year. But if I were to look at it and say, what is my thesis about? It is about the fragility of humanity. It is about knowing that even though we want to portray ourselves in one way, we make mistakes that sometimes we don't even realize.
Mm,
And even though I would like to advocate the importance of ethical business, I know that it's not possible to be always 100% ethical. So it is being as close as possible to our values and knowing when we have breached them and why. Because sometimes, even in leadership positions, you would need to take decisions that are not necessarily cut right or wrong.
mhm,
Do you give a promotion to a friend? Do you fire a person? Do you give, wage rises to people who don't necessarily um, work hard for them? These sort of things, they are critical questions for management. And when you experience management, you realize just how fragile we are.
yeah.
And that is, I would say, that is the 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 closing off of my thesis. And it is the ability to understand that we have values, and they are very, very important, that we need to realize what they are, but also to know that sometimes we go against them,
Mm,
and that we cannot hold it against others that they do. Because sometimes we find justifications for our own deviation from our own values. But when we see others that they do, you know what they did?
yeah. and the drama starts there.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yes.
From what I gather, it's a very subjective experience. I thought, I'm not sure whether I'm right or wrong on this, but I thought
Mhm.
ethics was a form of a common understanding also as well. So it's not only subjective, or I wasn't sure whether I wasn't as aware that this was a very subjective, that we can be ethical with ourselves, sort of. I thought it was a general consensus of the way that
I
things
see. I
should be
see.
done.
So that in ethics, like in many other subjects, there are points of view.
Okay.
So in ethics, there is what is called a normative point of view, which is exactly as you're saying, that there are a
Okay.
set of rules to which we all want to adhere to which we are supposed to adhere to, etc. Then there is the other side, so the psychological side of it, and it focuses more on what happens in reality. So the rules, yes, there are rules, and there are rules which most people around the world like to adhere to and like everyone else to adhere to, especially in business, like, for
Hmm.
example, not being cheated.
Hmm.
And that is a rule which hopefully, at least from what I've read, it seems to be somewhere all around the world. But then there is the lived experience of that. So it is called behavioral ethics, the other side. So one side is called the normative ethics, and it's about those rules. The other side is the behavioral ethics, and that is what happens in reality. So I have been
Okay.
looking more at the what happens in reality rather than the other side.
Okay. The fun stuff, I would say.
Yep.
Because very, very, I wasn't aware of this perspective, so I think I'm going to do some research on this because very
Just
interesting.
speak to me if you want to.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
No,
Well,
my
Corinne,
pleasure.
Corinne, you've uh, been through many academic endeavors, and now you're not nearing the end of your most recent one. But besides that, is there a particular skill or ability, even a personal trait that you are working on to improving in yourself?
Yes, I would say I would say there's a lot of that. And the biggest part of it is working on my vulnerability, as we were talking about before.
Hmm.
And it is about finding the balance to um, be able to put my own boundaries. And that is a big challenge, I must say, because I tend to say yes to most of the things, and then I come to the reality and find that it's very, very difficult. And once I've given my word, then I will go out of my way to do that. But I would
Yeah.
think that putting boundaries is one of the things. The second one is dealing with my vulnerability in the way that I tend to admit quite a lot that I have made mistakes, and sometimes it can be construed as not being strong enough.
Mm.
So that is a challenge which I don't want to surpass by admitting less mistakes. I want to surpass by enabling people to see that everyone does.
Okay. And do you have a plan to do that? Um,
No, I don't
yeah.
have a plan to do that. I,
Okay.
I plan to
Um,
live that day by day, Daniel.
hmm. I, I I think it depends on. Well, this goes very well with what we were saying before, and sometimes we just have to understand that the humanity and not understand that perhaps, but appreciate the humanity of other people, and it's a given that we do make mistakes. So there's no need for us to sort of admit, um, okay, we did a mistake, but it's good to admit that you can do something better. And
Yes,
there's it's always nice to have something to do better, because if we reach the limit, it means that we've reached perfection. Perfection is not something that we can
doesn't
reach.
exist anyways.
Um, but not everything is a mistake as well. Some are lessons.
hmm
Sometimes it's good to make an informed mistake so that you can
Yes,
learn from it.
yes, and sometimes it's important to experiment as well.
Yes.
One of the things that is fundamental to design thinking, for example, and innovation is failing fast and failing cheap, for example.
Yeah.
So trying things out and see what works, because if we don't try, we don't know. And then being able to move on from that.
Yes.
Learn from it. If it's good, continue building on that. Otherwise, scrap it and try something else.
Yes. No, but it's a very nice vision to
And I'm also
enjoy.
perfecting on my ġbejnit recipe, by the way.
Sorry, I didn't hear quite well. On?
On my ġbejnit recipe.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. And I guess they showed us the process of how Xbejnit are done. And actually, a colleague of mine was conducting a study on to make the Ġbejniet a national cheese of Malta, the national cheese of Malta.
Okay.
So yes, if you want the recipe, I think I can acquire one for you.
Good. Good. I actually take pride in not being constantly studying or working and so on. So I love to cook. I love to eat, as you can see as well. And I love to walk. I love
Okay.
camping.
So there's a balance, right?
Yes. There's a balance. That's right. I love to travel. I love cultures. It's travel brings us face to face with humanity.
Mm,
It's one of the nicest feelings that I get is going to a country, knowing a few words of that language and going
yeah,
there and learning the language from the locals, like tell me something, teach me something.
that's fair.
And
And it's very nice.
oh yes, and there's a nice thing when you say something in a language and you don't say it right unless you're swearing. It
Mm.
should be it's good that you're trying. I might not be good, but I'm trying to speak someone else's language.
I think Scottish is the Gaelic, or is it that Irish?
No, I think it's both Irish and Scottish.
Okay,
So
all right,
Gaelic
okay.
is seems to be shared, but I haven't got my head around that yet.
Okay.
Apart from the we, which is small, and the I, we'll get there bit by bit.
Yeah, bit by bit. It's only been a couple of months, so
Oh yes, that's right,
well,
Daniel.
Corinne, thank you for being here. I think it was a very warm and human conversation. I really appreciate the topics that we've discussed. And before we close off, is there anything that you would like to ask me?
Daniel, rather than ask, I would like to encourage you.
Okay.
Keep on at it. From what I have seen, both when we met in the past and today, and through our very little conversations that we had online, you are a human being who can help others very much. So please keep at it, and we'll never be perfect, but the world needs people like you.
Oh, thank you. That did make my day. So yeah. So thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate. Sometimes it's very hard to push forward. So and I make it look easy as well sometimes, but it's not.
Yes.
So I appreciate your words. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for this chat. I must say
Yeah,
I'm no longer anxious. It's nice.
that's good. That's good. That was the objective. That was the objective. Thank you for being here, Corinne.
Have a great day, Daniel. Thank you so much.